Eddie Canestracci here, and I'm back to discuss the Black Album. Why the hell am I discussing the Black Album? I mean, come on. It's one of the biggest selling albums of all time. It's Metallica's biggest album. Everyone knows the Black Album. I already talked about it once before in my Metallica Rankorama. I don't think I called that one a Rankorama. I think I went with Rank 'em All. Yeah, Rank 'em All. That's what I called it. Anyway, if you want to check that video out, I'll leave a link down below. There you go. And then you'll hear my thoughts on the Black Album and where I ranked it. I'll tell you right now where I ranked it. Number 5, the 5th best Metallica album. I think a lot of people think of it as the 5th best Metallica album. But you know who doesn't? The masses. Yes, the general public would think the Black Album is their best album because it sold. I'm going to get the exact figures. This is constantly updating. Yeah, the Black Album sales are going up as we speak. Okay, let's see. Okay, the latest count from Wikipedia, and Wikipedia is not always correct, so it's probably higher than what they're saying. Over 30 million copies sold worldwide. Metallica, that's the name of the album, by the way. It's not actually called the Black Album. It's self-titled. It's called Metallica, just Metallica. So with over 30 million copies sold worldwide, Metallica, aka the Black Album, is one of the best-selling albums worldwide and also one of the best-selling albums in the United States. So yeah, it sold a lot. It's 16 times platinum, over 30 million copies sold, and it's one of the biggest-selling albums of all time. Does that make it good, though? Does that make the Black Album good? Just because something is beloved and consumed by the masses, does that make it good? Yes and no. Let's tackle no first. No, just in and of itself, just because something is popular and consumed by a lot of people, does not make it good. At a certain level. Yes, at a certain level. But when we're talking about generation after generation of people buying this album and hearing these songs and going, hey, I like those songs, I'm actually going to buy it. People are buying it in 2024. In a time period when people don't even buy music, they're deciding to buy the Black Album. Wow. Yeah, so you have to admit, at least on an objective level, something's going on with that album. There's something happening with that album. There's something special about that album. It's not a flash in the pan. It's not like a fashionable album that's like stuck in the 90s. No, in the same way, Led Zeppelin 4 is not like stuck in the 70s. That's an active album. Like AC/DC's Back in Black is an actively selling album pushing units. There's always a new generation. Some new teenage kid hears Back in Black for the first time and goes, hey, I like that. I'm going to buy it. It connects with him. The Black Album is obviously an album like that. So even though it's my 5th favorite Metallica album, and I wouldn't even say I love the Black Album, I simply like it. Yeah, I like the Black Album. I think it's a good album. Half of the album has been burned out like motherfucking crazy for me. So yeah, I never need to hear those 5 singles ever again. But once in a while they pop up on a metal or rock shuffle, I roll with it. Whatever, not bad. I do love the deep tracks though, because they're not quite as burnt out. But even though I think it's just a good album, and it's my 5th favorite Metallica album, I understand. I understand why the public at large loves this album. I get it. It's really catchy. The songs are all very memorable. They're impactful. To me, you would have to be very biased and have a subjective view of the world to not concede that the Black Album works on many different levels, all right? Maybe it's not your thing. Maybe it's not your style of music. Maybe you don't like the production. Maybe you don't care for the songs, but you kind of have to objectively hear that the album works, and there's a reason why it's so successful. To me, the Black Album is essentially a slick and concentrated, slowed down, mainstream version of the kind of music they were making in the 80s. So to me, there's a connection. Like, it feels connected to the Metallica of the 80s, even though this is a obviously more commercial and more polished, more streamlined Metallica that they are presenting to you with the Black Album. But I feel like it is still, they are presenting you the Metallica from the 80s, but just in a mainstream way. Whereas the mid-90s stuff, like the Load albums, is a different kind of Metallica. That's even why they had a different logo. during that period. They were acknowledging that they were like a different band then. But we're not talking about those albums. We're talking about the Black Album. And the reason why I decided to talk about the Black Album is because I had a debate online. Yes, Jason Booth. This is where I'm going to bring you up. Bringing you up, buddy. Okay, so we had this little under the radar. I don't think a lot of people saw this on Facebook, but we had a little debate going that's been kind of going on for like a week now. It started in the Metal Mike Show Facebook group. So shout out to Metal Mike. I love Metal Mike. He's an awesome guy. He's been on my podcast. I've done some vidcasts with him on YouTube. Awesome guy. Love Metal Mike. I'm leaving a link down below to his show. So check out the Metal Mike Show. Do you like metal? There's a good chance you'll like metal. If you like Metallica, well, Metal Mike, as the name suggests, also loves metal, and he plays a lot of metal on his show. So check it out. Anyway, Bill Roseberry, another Facebook friend of mine, he did this post where it was a picture from like 1990, and it was James Hetfield, Ozzy Osbourne, Mike Patton, and Young MC. Yeah, I know that's kind of random, right? Young MC. And I love this picture. And I commented on it. And that's what led to this long debate that we had that eventually led to this video. And I'm going to read it to you right now. I'm going to read you the comments. I weighed in when I saw this picture. I've seen this picture before, and I always loved it. And this is what I said. This pic represents everything I love about the very early 90s. Jason Booth. Yes, the one and only Jason Booth. He weighed in. He went, wait, you like Metallica in the 90s? Low. Which that means laughing out loud. He was laughing out loud at me because this idea that I could possibly love Metallica in the 90s, who recorded their biggest album in the 90s and one of the most popular albums of all time. Yeah, over 30 million copies. Remember that? I told you all about that. So this idea that I would possibly like Metallica and maybe this album that they did that sold over 30 million copies and is one of the most popular rock albums of all time, he thought that was laugh out loud funny. I responded, this is early 90s. No, I put early in all caps. I did that as a stylistic technique to express emphasis. Yes, I was emphasizing that I liked the early 90s. I like the mid-90s too. I hate the late 90s. Late 90s had a lot of shitty music. So that's why I put it in all caps. Early 90s. And I'm not a Black Album hater. No, I did not say I loved it. I simply said I was not a hater. But what I love about that photo in that brief period before the Seattle scene blew up was the eclecticism of rock and metal music. Lots of different styles, and everything wasn't compartmentalized for tribal consumption. I'm kind of a smart guy. I write for a living. Jason Booth, he replied, okay, now the question is, why are you not hating on the Black Album? Do you need some pointers? Little humor there. It's all right. I like that. And low. So again, he's laughing. He's laughing. Even though I simply said I wasn't hating on the album, the idea that I wasn't hating on one of the most popular rock albums of all time seemed laugh out loud funny to him. It's like laughing at someone because he says he likes McDonald's or James Bond movies. Like, oh, you like McDonald's? Ah, ha, ha. Oh, you like James Bond movies? Ah, ha, ha. You like pizza? Pizza? Ooh, ooh. So I responded, it's a solid melodic metal album, and it killed off all those horrible glam metal acts of the late 80s. Nirvana was merely hammering the nails in the coffin. I'd rather a talented and innovative band like Metallica take a stab at mainstream rock than fluff pop acts who can barely play or sing like Poison. The deep tracks on the Black Album are especially good. Holier Than Now, Don't Tread on Me, Through the Never, The God That Failed, my favorite track, and Of Wolf and Men are all bangers, in my opinion. What, you don't like catchy heavy metal music? Respect the reined in tone. Jason Booth, he comes back. He comes back at me. He goes, I tell you what, I listened to that album for a couple of years, and I like the really catchy Wherever I May Roam and Holier, but after the initial infatuation, I realized just how hollow, overproduced, and bubblegum the whole thing was. Bob Rock liked to hollow out the bands he worked with, none of the bands he produced, and made also flavors of the week, kind of dissipated shortly after. If Cliff Burton had not checked out, he would have schooled Bob Rock's face off in the Bank album, because the album made bank. Yeah, it made a lot of fucking money. And the Bank album would have been a legit hard rock phenomenon and not a one-dimensional opportunistic piece of fluff. Have me on your podcast and we'll duke it out. Low. God, this Jason guy, he likes to laugh a lot. He's referring to my podcast, the Rock Overview Podcast with Eric Jordan RMCP. Link down below. Jason, he added some more. He said, and FNM, that means Faith No More, AIC, that means Alice in Chains, Pearl Jam, Nirvana, Soundgarden, and Mother Earth, Prong, Pantera, Sepultura, literally took the baton from Metallica because they were done. Okay, I gotta address a lot of things here. Let's go back to Bob Rock. Okay, not a fan. I'm not a big fan of Bob Rock's production. I kind of agree. It's too slick. I wouldn't say hollow. It's kind of the opposite of hollow. It's kind of too full sounding, I think, actually. But I definitely wouldn't say it's bubblegum. No, it's not bubblegum at all. I mean, if the Black Album's bubblegum, what are like the Spice Girls? You know, what's Britney Spears? You know, what's In Sync? If Metallica is bubblegum, then what's actual bubblegum pop music? More on Cliff Burton later, because he brings up Cliff Burton again. So I want to save the Cliff Burton stuff for a little bit later. He also talks about flavors of the week. But no, Bob Rock actually produced a lot of big bands that were not flavors of the week, like Metallica. Obviously, Metallica was not a flavor of the week, and the Black Album, for all the reasons I listed above, that over $30 million selling album that people are still buying to this day. It's a multi-generational album, and they are a multi-generational band that, I don't know if you know this, Jason, but they headline stadiums. Yeah, they headline stadiums. So, yeah, Metallica is definitely not a flavor of the week. Then he says, like, they were done. Like, that's it. Like, they did the Black Album and they were done. Like, no, it's literally the opposite. Their career skyrocketed and they went to the next level. And they were so good that they did mediocre albums like the Load albums in the mid-90s, and they still made lots of money, and those albums sold very well. That's how not done they were. Yes, Metallica was like literally the opposite of done. Yes, they became one of the most successful rock bands in history. So I responded to all that, and I said it was a pretty hefty baton. And I'm not personally a big fan of the other things they did in the 90s, but no doubt Metallica were still commercially successful in doing what they wanted. And it was still rock music. It's not like they were doing boy band shit like Def Leppard. Just my opinion. So you see, I could be a little bit of a hater. Yeah, I threw some shade at Def Leppard. I threw some shade earlier at Poison, if you took note. Now, this is the difference, though. I don't go on pages, though. I don't create a post saying Poison sucks or later Def Leppard sucks. I don't do that because I don't want to rain on other people's parade. If they love it, hey, if they want to party with their shitty music, that's great. It's not shitty to them. It's called personal taste. It's an opinion. I'm not like a fascist trying to force people to like the shit I like and make them hate the things I hate. But anyway, so I thought we got left at that. So I think he's just like kind of busting my balls a bit for like it. Well, simply not hating the Black Album and liking a lot of the deep tracks on it. But he busted my balls for it. Speaking of balls, let's get into the long post that he did this morning. This morning I saw this post, and that's why I made this video. And he tagged me on it. To his credit, he had enough social awareness to not put this post on my main Facebook wall. So thank you, Jason. I appreciate that. I got a bunch of normies as Facebook friends. I got like work colleagues, family, ex-girlfriends, ex-wives. Like, yeah, there's a lot of people that I don't want them seeing this fucking man cave metal shit. So I appreciate that, Jason. I appreciate that you kept it in the metal groups. But anyway, it was in one of the metal groups. I don't know. We belong to a lot of metal groups. I know one of them had to be the mofos of metal. Now, most people would think it's shocking that someone would hate the Black Album so much. Well, those people have obviously never scrolled through the post of the Mofos of Metal Facebook group. Yes, lots of hating on Metallica. Also hating on Led Zeppelin and even Black Sabbath. Black Sabbath, that's a new one. I never knew metal fans that hated Black Sabbath. Just the Ozzy era. They don't like the Ozzy era. I think they think they're like a bunch of hippies or something. They don't like it. All right, not metal enough. Yeah, so the band that created metal, they don't like. Talk about lol. Anyway, so Jason Booth, he had this post. I'm sure it was in the Mofos and Metal group and some other metal groups that we belong to. This is the big post, all right? And he tagged me. Remember, he tagged me on this post. So it's directed at me. I know some of you out there absolutely lick Lars' balls. But as long as you Muppets refuse to accept the truth of the matter, this war will rage on until the ends of time. I like they said the ends of time. Ends is plural. So that's like a lot of ends of times. Here are some pointers to ponder. Metallica unwittingly created Nickelback in 1991. Now, at very least, he's saying unwittingly. So it's not like they did it on purpose. They didn't like purposely create Nickelback, because who the fuck would want to do that? Obviously, it was some kind of scientific accident. Bob Rock oversaturated the hard rock metal market by overproducing every big album he worked on. He basically is responsible for the demise of the 80s scene. Okay, I have a lot of issues with this. Hey, he's acting like Bob Rock produced every album in the 90s, which he didn't, for one thing. Butch Vig produced Nirvana's Nevermind and Smashing Pumpkins' Siamese Dream, and then the garbage albums that he was part of that band. So I would say, if anything, Butch Vig was probably the biggest producer of the 90s. But anyway, yeah, Bob Rock, he did a couple big albums. He did a couple Motley Crue and Metallica albums. It's not like every album in the 90s was produced by Bob Rock. You know, the 80s had a lot of shitty, overproduced albums too. You know, Bruce Fairbairn, for example. Plus, this 80s scene that you're romanticizing, and this is something I see a lot in these metal groups. I don't know if they're just kind of confusing the early 80s with all of the 80s, or if they just like anything that's from the 80s. So it's like, I don't know, it's like cosplay. They just like the 80s, like totally gnarly, dude. So if it's 80s, it's all right. But, you know, I was there, and I'm telling you, a lot of mainstream rock music sucked. Yeah, there was like Warrant, Poison, and Bon Jovi, all the glam metal shit. There was a lot of shitty mainstream music that was very, very popular. And thankfully, the Black Album got rid of a lot of that shit. Lars and Kirk basically came out of the closet, all thanks to Lars' unrelenting pursuit of Axl's tight spandex ass, and his FM radio lust became too much to contain. Okay, he's referring to this fleeting moment in the mid-90s where Lars and Kirk wore mascara, and they sometimes would do things like they kissed like in front of an interviewer once just to kind of get a reaction. I guess he's referring to that. Well, for one thing, I'm not homophobic, so I do not have a problem with that. And in fact, I have a problem with homophobia. I do not care for it, Jason. You gotta chill on the homophobia, because I don't think it's cool. Maybe it's not that. Maybe you're just being sardonic. You're not homophobic. You're just making fun of like the pose. Like you think they're posing or being fake, kind of being trendy or whatever. Fair enough. I'll give you the benefit of the doubt, Jason. Maybe that's what that comment's about. Well, yeah, they are posing a little bit. It wasn't actually Guns N' Roses. Lars, he was really into U2 during that period. This whole Zoo TV thing, and seeming more slick and rock and roll and decadent in contrast to their earnest image from the 80s. That was more about that. That was more about them trying to emulate U2 than Guns N' Roses. Also, why are you bringing this up? This is fucking mid-90s shit. We're not talking about the Load albums. That's not the Black Album. And that's not what Metallica looked like or acted like in 1991. Keep your focus, Jason. Let's keep this on the Black Album. Hetfield, losing his voice, condemned him to take vocal lessons, which he never needed until he got too drunk and somehow thought that singing like a country singer was perfectly okay, because now he was an MTV rock god. It was painfully obvious that without Cliff, Metallica completely lost their way and decided to just do absolutely anything and everything the corporate heads coerced them to do for profit. Metallica literally destroyed every possibility of thrash metal, making a massive comeback in the late 90s and stopping the emo nu metal brainwashing of the masses. Okay, one might say that sounds a little extreme and like this is just music, it's entertainment. They are entertainers, Metallica. They are song and dance men. This is not a real war. I know they had that song, Metal Militia, but no, this is not actually a war that's going on. I know there is kind of an incel vibe to the Mofos of Metal group, but just take your meds, chill out, it's just music. Some band that did some albums you loved in the 80s, did some albums you hate in the 90s. Not a big deal. I do take issues with this Cliff Burton line of attack, though. I've heard this for years from metal fans. And they weigh in like they're experts on Metallica and Cliff Burton. And it's like, obviously you don't know much about this band and you don't know much about Cliff Burton, because Cliff Burton was the guy in the band that was like the hippie that loved Blue Oyster Cult and Thin Lizzy and Leonard Skinner. And even, oh my God, heaven forbid, Velvet Underground. Yeah, Cliff Burton loved the Velvet Underground. He loved a lot of different kinds of music. And in fact, he was a little older than the other Metallica guys and a little more sophisticated with his music taste. He was the one that was always trying to push their boundaries. He was also the one into classical music. This idea that Metallica would not have given up thrash and would have stayed metal with Cliff just shows that you don't know anything about Cliff Burton and his taste in music and his role in the band. Now, whether or not the quality would have been better with Cliff Burton, yeah, probably. Probably the quality and the songwriting would have been a little bit stronger if they had Cliff Burton there adding his considerable musical talent to the group. No doubt he would. But in terms of the genres they went to and the fact that they experimented with like Southern rock and different styles, that's totally the kind of stuff Cliff Burton would have been down with. Even the playing with orchestra shit. Cliff Burton probably would have been fine with that. He liked classical music. So the truth is, Metallica would have still went in that same direction, even with Cliff Burton. And he'd be the first guy. Cliff would be the first guy to say, great, let's not just play thrash anymore. And you're acting like it's the corporations. You know, Metallica wanted to do these things. Metallica were dictating it. If anything, the corporation would have said, just keep doing the Black Album again and again and again, because it was so successful. If anything, Load was taking a slight chance because it was different from the Black Album. In the Saint Anger, you think the corporate heads wanted Saint Anger? No, I'm sure they were just like Lars's father when he heard Saint Anger. I'm sure the suits were like, oh, God, why are you doing this shit, Metallica? Do something like Enter Sandman, please. Hey, why don't you write another love song like Nothing Else Matters? You notice how Metallica never did that again? They never even wrote another love song again, like Nothing Else Matters, even though that would have been a surefire way to have a radio hit. No, Metallica was not into repeating themselves. Maybe you did not like the direction they went into. I'm not crazy about it myself, but I don't mind it in theory because I love all kinds of different music. They were talented people and yeah, try to experiment. They were the metal band that invented thrash, like Black Sabbath invented heavy metal. And usually bands like that, like Black Sabbath, they like to experiment. They don't want to just stay in that one box. Yeah, so it's not surprising that the originators of thrash would want to move past thrash and try different forms of rock music. Not to mention, you like grunge music, so I don't even understand why you hate slow down thrash, because slow down thrash is practically grunge music. As you state here, grunge was absolutely more genuine and better than what Metallica were trying to do, and Metallica simplifying their sound also led way for the basicness of nu metal to gain the upper hand. Yes, thank every Black Album fan for resulting in nu metal. Some younger people watching this video might wonder what he's talking about. Nu metal was a subgenre of heavy metal music that was popular briefly from the late 90s into the early O's. It is not a really big genre today, all right? It's not popular today. Metallica is popular today. Actually, regular heavy metal, what I'd call traditional heavy metal, is more popular than nu metal today. So I don't know why he's focusing on nu metal. Who gives a fuck about nu metal? It's done. So in conclusion, if you literally cannot understand how absolutely disastrous the Black Album was to music in general, you are, well, there's a period there, and then he starts a new sentence. That's grammatically incorrect, Jason, but it's all right. It's rock and roll. You don't have to be grammatically correct. You are one pretty much hopeless dingus. Yeah, he said dingus. But then he did the horns. All right, dingus. Am I the dingus? Okay. Music's very important to me. I'm passionate about it. And I know that other people that are passionate about it, the Black Album's a gateway album. Hell, even back in 1991, when they were touring, they were doing all these songs, all these thrash songs from their earlier albums on that tour. Listen to the Binge and Purge fucking triple live CD. They're playing Master of Puppets and Ride the Lightning songs and Kill 'Em All songs for the general public. And they were eating it up. That's why those albums are all platinum as well. They all sold well. Maybe not quite like the Black Album, but they're all multi-platinum selling albums now as a result. And so, yes, as I said to Jason Booth, I am not a hater. So to answer that question that's in my thumbnail, is the Black Album a bad album? Obviously, I don't think so. I think it's a good album. I'm definitely not a hater. But what do you think? What do you think out there? Let me know. Is the Black Album a bad album, a good album, or just meh? Let me know. And by the way, I now have over 2,040 subscribers. Yeah! Right on. We're getting up there. A lot of that was because of that Jaws video I did. A lot of people like that Jaws video. That's got, I don't know what the latest numbers on that one are. It's like 120,000 something. It's a lot. It's a lot of numbers. It's so many people have saw that Jaws video that I kind of lost track. I'm not really counting it anymore. A lot of people love Jaws. It's a great movie. Does that make it bad because a lot of people love it? I don't think so. So thank you. Thank you everyone who subscribed to my channel. Thank you to any new people who are going to be subscribing now because of this video. I appreciate it. Let's keep the conversation going. Yeah, I like to talk about music and movies. I'm talking about movies now just as much as the music, but I am going to continue doing music. So if you're like old school fans of this channel and you're worried that I wouldn't do music anymore, as you can see, I'm doing music still. And I'm going to reward my subscribers for pushing me over 2,000 with a Rankorama. My next video is going to tackle another controversial band in the Mofos of Metal group. Who would think that they'd be a controversial band? Yeah, Black Sabbath. Black Sabbath. I'm finally, after years of saying I would do it, I'm finally going to do a Black Sabbath Rankorama. That's going to be my next video, so stay tuned for that. This was fun, Jason Booth. I hope you're a good sport about it. But hey, I asked your permission. I said, hey, do you mind if I do this video and name check you? You said, go ahead, man. Let's do it. You got a YouTube personality or whatever that's on YouTube. Weigh in, Jason. Weigh in the comment section here. So once again, I'm Edwin Canistracci. Rock and roll.